Welcome back to another episode of Paint Society. In this episode, well, we're gonna fix one of our subscribers' handiwork that they did in the garage that just didn't turn out too well. Don't overthink it, it's just paint. And we have Rob here, one of my subscribers that did a little handiwork on his 911, and tell me exactly what happened here.
So I've been watching Paint Society and Brian for quite some time, and Brian is great and he always makes things look easy. But in this case, a lot easier than was possible for me.
So what did we actually have here underneath the hood that has primer?
So as we all know, we get road debris from driving your car, and there were some chips on the hood, and I figured after watching Brian, I could fix it myself. So it turns out it was not easy as I thought. I didn't finish the job because this was a bigger project and more detailed than I was capable of doing.
Right. So you're saying that pretty much after watching these videos, you can get a little bit dangerous?
Yeah, I think I was overzealous in my abilities in this case.
Yeah. So basically what I would like to tell you guys is when you're watching the videos, take it with a grain of salt. If it's something that you're not concerned about possibly messing up, or if you're okay bringing it to get repaired later on.
Have the expert do it.
Yeah, or at least have it take a look or see if it's something you should do first. For this particular project, what we're gonna do, Rob, is it looks like I'm gonna have to sand out all your handiwork, see what's exactly under here, because this looks like a rattle can or aerosol.
Absolutely.
Okay, and we wanna put a little bit better material on here. Now I'm gonna do the best job I possibly can to keep it within the hood and not blend into the actual fender itself. And at the very end, we'll bring it back and we'll see if you like it.
I'm sure it's gonna be perfect.
All right, so let's go ahead and get to work. Now, Rob had all the intentions of fixing it himself. See, he watches the videos and, well, he figured, let me just try myself. It looks easy on video. Unfortunately, with a job like this and even hoods, stay away from the rattle cans. Use the rattle cans for panels that are on the side of the car or panels you can take off and hang up and down. For this, it just didn't work out. Let's see exactly what's going on. Let's sand it down and see what handiwork Rob had done here, remove it, and do the proper work before refinishing. The first thing I'm gonna start off with is a P320 grit on a block, everything by hand. I don't wanna really damage what we have here, and I wanna see what's going on. So we're starting with a very least invasive method here, because I don't wanna damage the paint here, because I wanna be able to blend into this good paint without having to go into the actual fender itself. So a little bit of 320, let's see what it does, and then we'll go from there. And a good thing about the 1K primer, the rattle can primer, is it sands off pretty easy. Now this was a chip, and there's a couple chips along the hood that he already touched up that we're going to handle. So it looks pretty good because we're able to eliminate the area a little bit and make it a little bit smaller. So what we'll do from this point is I want to go ahead and I want to get this whole entire hood sanded down. By getting this hood sanded down, what that's going to do for me, it's just going to show me all the little imperfections that might be a little bit hard to see with the shine. And then that will kind of show them a little bit closer because we'll be able to see little pits here and there. So we're going to sand this down with a P600 for now, and now we'll expose any of our areas. Now for this job, I'm using a P600, and I'm going over all of the clear coat that has not been sanded. And again, what this does is it shows me where my debris is, where my rock chip damage is, and then I can further assess it here in the next few steps. Here's the hood after it's been sanded. Now we do have an array of chips here and there. There's two ways to fix these chips before primer. You can feather each one of them out, or we can put just a little bit of 2K filler in them. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a little bit of 2K filler. I'm gonna first 320 the area so it has something to bite into, and then drop a little bit of filler in each one of these. Sometimes when you sand it smooth and feather it out, what can happen is you might have a little bit of a wavy area if it's not 100% perfect because of the different layers of the paint. This paint is very thick. There's also a very thick edge here, and I don't want to risk that situation. So I think the best operation here for these chips is just drop a little bit of filler in there once they're all cleaned out. So let's first 320 it. Next, you're going to want to use a wax and grease remover to remove any of the residue or any contaminants that are still in the chip itself so that the filler can adhere properly. For the chips, I'm going to use just a glazing putty. You don't want to use any spot filler. That's 1K. This has a hardener, it's 2K, meaning it's going to lock it down. It's not going to shrink. Please do not use any of those 1K fillers for this. I have my spreader. I'm going to go ahead and mix it. And after it's mixed, it should be one uniform color. Now, I took my same spreader and I cut off a little piece. This is really going to help me so I don't get an excess amount of filler where I don't want it to be. So it's very simple. I'll just wipe a little bit in each area, and this will really level it off and make sanding a lot easier. That will just about do it. We'll allow this to dry for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll come back. And after 15 minutes, here's a little tip and trick that you can use to kind of smooth these out before you sand them, because if you're sanding too aggressively, it can also create a low spot. So you can take just a little bit of a razor, and this will kind of knock the edge off the high ridges. And what that will do in turn is when you go to sand it, you'll spend less time sanding and less of a chance, once again, of creating some sort of low spot in the paint. Just a quick and easy tip when you're fixing chips like this. In the end, what will happen is there'll only be the filler remaining in the chip, which will be a small area. Now for the remainder of the chips, I'm using a 3M block. I love this narrow block because it doesn't sand more than what you want it to. You can really control it easier. That's 180 there, so a little bit more aggressive because you need to knock the filler flat. If you're using, like, let's say a 320 or even maybe a 220, it will kind of go over it and create like a mountain, but you want to knock this flat so once the car is all painted, there's no trace that you were ever in this area. And it doesn't take much, just a little bit of that and you're good to go. It left the filler right in its spot where it should be. And that's what I love about glaze. Glaze is a very easy sanding filler. It's only meant for minor imperfections. Your body fillers are going to be a little bit thicker. You would not necessarily use a body filler here, although it would work. It's just not necessary for the job we have to do here. So we'll do just a little bit of sanding and we'll take a look at what it looks like when it's all done. And as we finish up the last spots, it's not a bad idea to just kind of feather over the area a little bit more. That way we're making sure that we are completely blocking everything out properly. And we're not gonna have, once again, any sort of waves in the paint once we're done. So a little bit of 180 here. We'll refine this just a hair with our 320 here in a moment because we're already ready for our primer coat. We'll now follow it up with a 320. Now we only need to use 320 in our working area because we want to refine our scratch from primer. We're refining that 180 scratch. After that, it's ready for primer. We can see that Rob's little repair is the least of our worries, and all we had to do is feather it out, and that is repaired. Basically, this whole area had chips here and there. That's why we're not attacking this area, because we weren't able to find any chips in the panel. So what we'll do now is we'll mix up some white primer, and we'll prime the front half of our hood. Now the reason why we use an automotive primer is because the primer is going to fill in those P320 grit scratches. The primer will lay down just a little bit rough, but that primer is meant to be sanded so that it can be painted. It's not like the house primer where you prime and then paint. You gotta sand your primer in order for it to be smooth and allow the base coat and then the clear to bite. So let's go ahead and get priming. We have our primer loaded. This is a white color build, and we're gonna prime lightly the whole area. We'll apply 2 coats of primer, 10 minutes in between. We're using a 1.4 fluid tip in the PPS Performance Gun by 3M. Now you can see our paint went all the way to the edge here because of the rock chips. So we really need to focus later on getting a good color match because we're not blending into our fenders. Allow this to dry for 10 minutes. We'll apply our second coat just a little bit thicker. To put it on thicker, all we'll do is just go a little bit slower. 2 coats is all we'll need because we didn't have a lot of body work. So allow this to cure before we sand. I'm gonna give it a good 4 hours. 4 hours later, the primer's had a good time to really dry. Now, if this was a high build primer, surfacer primer, a much thicker primer, I will give it 24 hours. But right here, it's good to go. So what I have is my guide coat, and this is a dry guide coat, which I like to use because it's really gonna get into all of those little chips. Sometimes you might find it that one of the chips you didn't get 100% or you maybe missed it. Well, this is gonna show you exactly what is going on. And the powder will actually go a little bit deeper than the spray. They make this in an aerosol as well. But the powder, you wanna rub it around everywhere. And this will kinda get into the lowest parts of the primer and show you. So we're gonna be using a 320 grit for this. And you could just take that block and wrap a piece of paper around it. And basically what we're going to be doing is sanding this smooth. Now, let me show you what we're doing here. So we had a couple chips in this area high up, and it's gonna identify those chips and it's gonna show you where they are. So basically right in this area, there's a chip still, or the primer filled it in, but we need to keep feathering it out so it's completely removed. Another one was here. And those are the chips that primer can fill. Some of the very, very shallow ones, your primer can definitely fill, but you don't want to abuse the primer, right? You want to know the limitations. So basically what guide coat is it shows you, hey, once it's all white, then we know that it's been sanded down. If there's nothing that's still showing, like there's still guide coat showing here, it's pretty much a visual aid that tells you, hey, keep on sanding. And then what we're gonna do, we'll 320 this off. Once this is all 320 by a block, since it's flat, we don't have to worry about any waves. Unless you're holding it like this, don't hold it like this, hold it flat. Okay? Then we're gonna run over it with a DA to refine the scratch. And then she's ready to paint, just like that. So let's go ahead and get this thing completely blocked out. When it comes to sanding your primer down initially, always use that block. You want to make sure it's completely flat, there's no low spots or high spots, and the block will show you that. In the next step, we can go ahead and use our DA sander. Once it's been sanded down with a P320, let's go over it again one more time, but this time we're going to refine it with the P600. We're not going to seal this, we're going to go straight to base coat. So what this is going to do now is a double check. Hey, did we get everything? And we need to refine that 320 grit scratch because we don't want to put paint over that. I'm thinking more like a P600 is pretty good sand scratch to put some base coat over. Our DA will move nice and slow and check our work. Once I get everything sanded down in a 600 grit, then I'll come over the whole top with a Maroon Scuff Pad. Maroon Scuff Pad is a little bit more aggressive than the gray, but for a white finish, solid white, you're gonna be just fine. I like to use a little bit of degreaser just because it helps clean the panel. Any of those contaminants from fish eyes or anything like that, we can kind of just wash them away right before we do our final cleaning. Just an extra step to help you guys out. So we'll just go over the whole panel, make sure to attack those edges. You don't want any peeling in those areas. We'll allow this to dry, and then we're ready to send it into the paint booth. And we're ready to go. It's all masked up. I got the color mixed up. We're gonna try to blend this as easy as possible. White is actually the hardest color to actually blend when it's a solid white and no pearl, because all we have is the base color to blend. We don't have any pearl to kind of hide our blend. So we got the color really good, and we're gonna do our best to cover up this area first, and then we'll extend our blend into the rest of the hood and try to stay away from both of our fenders the best we can. We're ready to spray down our base here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover my primered area first. And you can see I'm not spraying the length of the hood because I don't want too much overspray to go over my blend area, because at this point I'm not sure exactly how it's going to match and how well it's going to blend. But after it dries, I can tell that I have a pretty good match. So my second coat 10 minutes later is going to cover much better, and from here I can determine which way I want to go with the paint. Here I'm using a 1.3 with the DV1, and it atomizes the paint so well, it puts it on so smooth. But remember, you also want to use the slowest reducer possible, especially in hotter temperatures. So what I decided to do, since we had such a good color match, is I'm still staying away from that edge. I'm not putting paint by the fender. You can see how my tape by the fenders, it's still yellow. I decided, let me go over the whole hood just in case I had a couple areas that needed a little bit of white base coat. And this will also help it give it more consistent look. Since the color match was so good, I went ahead and just took it all the way to the end of the hood and then just did a little bit of a light blend towards the fenders. At this point, we were ready to clear coat it. I like to allow at least good 30 minutes before clear coat from base coat. Allow all those solvents to come out of the base, and you'll be able to lay down 2 coats. You're going to want to wait at least 10 minutes between each coat. Allow that coat to really dry out first and become sticky for the next coat. Here we're using the Devilibus DV1 clear coat gun with a 1.3, and I'm spraying it around 18 to 21 psi. This gun operates at a very low pressure but atomizes very well, and also has a better and higher transfer efficiency rate, meaning more paint on a panel and less paint in the air, saving you time and money. Most clears will also just be 2 coats. If you want to put a third coat on, you're going to want to wait longer between the second and third coat. I would say at least maybe 15 to 20 minutes instead of that normal 10. Here's what it looks like after 2 coats. It looks absolutely stunning. They put a high solids clear on there. It matches the rest of the actual texture on the fenders and the rest of the vehicle, and I'm sure Rob is going to be very happy with the way it looks. Once we got it out of the paint booth, we can see that the match to the fenders is beautiful. I can tell the bumper may have been painted at one time since it's just a little bit greener than the rest of the vehicle, but we have an amazing match. Let's see what Rob thinks. And there she is. It's all done, and guess who's back? Mr. Rob.
Hey guys. Don't ever do this to your wife's car again. It was not a pretty sight.
Not a pretty sight. So we were able to fix it. And one thing I told you, Rob, when you contacted me and you showed me that spotted primer, I said to you, just do what?
Don't make it any worse than you already did.
Just stop, right?
Just stop.
Tell me what you were gonna do though. You were gonna spray it and then buff it or do something like that of that nature?
So yeah, with a spray can doesn't seem to work out as well as a real paint job in a body shop.
Now, if this was your car, would you have attempted it? Since it was your wife's, you did.
I did either way, because I figured worst case scenario, I can get somebody like Brian to fix it.
All right, well, that's a good way to think about it. So I'm glad that we were able to come in here and show you what to do, and when you watch the video you'll see that, hey, probably better for a professional deal with something like this. In the meantime, guys, this is Brian from Paint Society and Rob reminding you, don't overthink it.
It's just paint.
We'll see you guys on the next one.